We're sleeping in the foxhole dinner too. Beans and weenies, helmets too. It's no surprise that I'm feeling mean with this dirt decor and canned cuisine. And it's another long night out in the dark. The VC's bite is worse than their bark. I get uptight when I try to stick.
Veterans often experience mental health benefits by simply sharing their stories.
We come marching overseas. We come marching overseas. Oh, make one say for democracy. Make one say for democracy. Ho Chi Minh kiss it goodbye. Ho Chi Minh kiss it goodbye. Home by Christmas, do or die. Home by Christmas, do or die. Home by Christmas, do or die.
Blouse, trousers, bush hat, cam is neatly pressed.
Polish boots, rather clean, laughers ain't impressed.
Poker game, stand my watch, come on, cut Miss Flag.
Mail call, chow call, time to hit the sack.
A roadside coke stand,
Barbershop,
a haircut,
shave.
black market pot.
See a flick,
Jug of beer, freedom bird, check out of here.
booker, tea, lie, do my me.
Chow on, chow bot, chow co, come with me.
Long time,
Short time,
souvenir, me cigarette.
hey, boom, 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 mama sign.
Crocodile, number yet.
Way,
Danang,
DMC, Central Highlands to the sea. It's you, hoy.
Diddy Mountain.
Man, I think we'll dig it down.
Mark Waszkiewicz, like many young men raised in the 50s, dreamed of being a soldier.
My stepdad was a 23-year Navy veteran. When Vietnam came, it was just my turn to go.
Mark and his high school bandmate, Tom Marable, enlisted in 1966.
I marched young and strong into the fire.
We all just wanted to be John Wayne.
I was moved by faith and courage, fear and desire. I never guessed that my dreams would go down so hard. Yeah, it's the changing of the guard. The changing of the guard.
I raised my right hand to defend and support the Constitution of the United States.
I knew that there were people who needed us and that we had to go help them. And I recognized that as a moment of courage.
Never even got in a fight when I was a kid. But I knew that I had to do this because I had seen it in the movies.
Not to win medals or anything like that there. I wanted to go for the United States. I wanted to go.
Nobody broke my arm to join. I kick myself in the butt every day. I'm probably more angry with myself than anybody.
What turned out to be fairy tales that I grew up watching on the silver screen and listening to through my forefathers, you know. that experienced previous wars.
I was 28 years old. I wasn't 18 for my first visit to an Asian country. I've been in Asia lots of times previously as a lieutenant.
I wanted to test myself in my bravery, and I wanted a rite of passage into manhood.
We were all kids.
I remember photographs of my father's war and his victory. Red, white, and blue of the icing. And in my heart there was no doubt. When my time came, well, I'd fall in line. I'd give it all to hear those bells of freedom ring.
I stepped off the plane into heat, humidity, smells, dirt.
My first impression of it was it stunk. It was hot.
Hot.
Heat, obviously. Very, very hot.
It hit me like a brick.
Well, step right on to the tarmac, Jack. Trucking it down the road. Yeah, welcome to the Nam, no turning back. Trucking it down the road. Bugs everywhere and it's hot as hell. Trucking it down the road. All this noise, man, what's that smell? Trucking it down the road. Well, feel like John Wayne riding high. Trucking it down the road. This far out country flying by. Trucking it down the road. Oh, we're wild and loud and fast and free. Trucking it down the road. Beating feet through the backcountry. Trucking it down.
I'd hop in my truck, and as soon as I was out the gate and made a turn onto Highway 1, I just felt free again.
I felt good when I got away from the confines of the military. Okay, there was a certain freedom in that.
It was an opportunity to get away from the scrutiny and the tedium.
There was a beauty there that hid on the edge of the danger.
Roadside retail, coke and pie. Trucking it down the road. Hey, some are friendly, some are not. Trucking it down the road. Hey, step right on to the tarmac, Jack. Trucking it down the road. Welcome to the Nam, no turning back. Welcome to the Nam, no turning back. Yeah, welcome to the Nam, no turning back. Welcome to the Nam, no turning back. Yeah, welcome to the Nam, no turning back.
Upon arrival in Vietnam, Mark was assigned to a fire support base 7 miles south of Danang.
In a fire support base, we lived inside a tent with folding canvas cots.
There he was befriended by Vinnie Brennan.
When I finally got to Vietnam, I tried to get in a clique right away with a bunch of people that I thought were all right. They didn't want to have anything to do with the new guy. It was bad luck. And I made it a point later on when I became an old guy that anybody new came in, I tried to be friends with right away, make them feel good, because I didn't like what happened to me.
Life on the base revolved around a number of menial but important tasks: mess duty, policing up garbage, guard assignments, and the dread burning of the shitters. Some of the men volunteered for this detail because the stench kept the lifers away, which would allow the men to have a beer or smoke a joint. The base was surrounded by a tangle of concertina wire and strategically placed observation posts, or OPs. Villages were off limits for men on the base, but some locals were permitted to provide services, like barbering, just outside the wire.
They put a little hooch up outside, and they put a barber's chair in it, and you could buy Coca-Cola and stuff. I sat down, and the fella he was with the clippers, he did the clipping, and he took that straight razor out. There I was with a Vietnamese man at my throat with a straight razor. One night, the unit across from us got hit, and guess who was laying on the wire in the morning? The barber. He was one of the VC that attacked the 5th Marines.
Boot camp had made them all Marines, and they were trained for combat in infantry school. Some, like both Mark and Vinny, had received additional special training in artillery fire direction control.
An artillery fire mission was a team effort. The call came in, we made the calculations in the FDC, and sent the data down to the big guns.
Head Cold Echo, this is BeachNet 6-4, BeachNet 6-4, fire mission, over. Roger, BeachNet, send it, over. Grid 493-647, 12 Victor Charlie on hillside. One gun adjust, shell Hotel Echo.
Range to target 1740. Charge 4, elevation 160.
Roger, gun 3 adjust, charge 4, elevation 160. Shell HE, fire when ready.
Gun 3 here, copy charge 4, elevation 160. Shell HE, fire when ready.
Roger, gun 3.
Come on guys, move it, let's go. Stand by, fire!
Mark's dad, working for McDonnell Douglas at the time, paid Mark an unexpected visit.
They put me in the same tent with you, and which was very good. And it would have been fine, except that early that next morning, the Viet Cong picked to mortar us.
We met your father. And I remember the first night, we had intelligence reports that we were going to be attacked. We all went out in the line and we stayed out there all night long, about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And all of a sudden they started yelling, incoming, here they come, here they come, incoming. I had no control over my legs. I was shaking so much, and I was cold, and the round started impacting.
Mark's dad dragged Mark into the nearest foxhole.
What went through your mind while we were sitting in the foxhole together?
What the hell am I doing here?
And they didn't follow up with a ground attack. They just shelled us. I remember the next day coming there and looking at your father, and your father shaking his head, and I knew he had a feeling that I don't want to leave my son here.
Favorite time I like to remember in Vietnam was the golden hour.
Sit back, relax, and let your mind unwind as we roll you into the golden hour.
This was a time you could relax. I could relax.
Well, we cranked up some music and everybody just get crazy. We'd drink wine, we'd drink beer, toke a little bit.
I would take a break for a while and maybe get a chance to get a letter out and of course bullshit with the guys and talk and have a few cigarettes and stuff.
We would all gather in a bunker, sit on top when the weather was really nice, or sit inside with candles, sitting and talking.
And if we weren't filling sandbags, we had times that we would sit around and guys would talk about their families.
Sometimes there would be card playing if we had enough candles and the sergeant didn't want us to put them all out.
It would always be on my mind before it got dark. I'd have to start getting my shit together to do what I would have to do for that night.
Time to write letters and kind of get the hooches going and kind of rap and, wait for darkness. Darkness was always kind of the scary time.
The big thing in Vietnam was a flick. They weren't the greatest movies. They weren't movies that were made that year or the year before. It was 10 years old, some of these movies. So that particular night, we all gathered, and guys that weren't on watch, were on the OPs, and we go down to see the movie. And the movie is about Frankenstein and these aliens. And we're watching this movie, and Frankenstein's attacking people, and he attacked these people and attacked this woman, and they were screaming. And then the aliens came, and the aliens were after people and Frankenstein, and it was like an utter chaos, mass confusion type thing. But the whole thing was the screaming that was going on in the movie. Ah! Woo! Ah! So we watched this freaking movie, and it was really funny, but it was intense. And you know, here we are in the middle of nowhere. So I had to go on watch that night at 12 o'clock at night. And we had to go out to an OP, and I went with a guy named Joey Sortecki. Hey man, how short are you?
14 days in a wake up. I deed him out, man. Why don't you see what's on the radio?
This is your friend Hanoi Hannah speaking to you on Radio Hanoi. We wish to show you we want to be your friends, not to fight you. You shouldn't be home with your wife and girlfriends.
Oh, man.
Jody is with her right now. They are having good time together while you are away from home.
Oh, screw that, shut it off.
Beautiful clear night. Artillery is going off, boom, boom. The H&Is were going out. Then it got quiet, and we're out there. Now it's 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the morning. It's quiet as can be. And we're talking about the flick. And it was saying, you think there are aliens out there? And we got ourselves so intense with this alien stuff that these aliens are going to come down and get us, that it was like we were in the movie. We're out there, and all of a sudden we hear this screaming sound, and I remember him going, aliens! And he opened up out there. So I started shooting. The guys in the OP next to us started shooting. The other guys on the other side started shooting. Throwing handguns. Ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. The gunny comes along. What do you got? What do you got? Ceasefire. What do you got? Martians. There's Martians. I told the freaking gunny that they were Martians. He went, fucking Martians. You're watching too many movies. He's screaming and yelling. He got up, he kicked the dirt, and he walked down the bottom of the freaking hill. Master Gunnery Sergeant Kelleher was our top. What in the fuck was that last night? And I said, we thought we heard something. The gunny said you saw Martians. And Joey said, it sounded like Martians to us. He says, how the fuck you know what a Martian sounds like? We saw the movie, Top. He says, you two are assholes. Everybody in the compound that night, or the next 2 days, were talking about, pointing at us, they're the Martian guys. You guys shooting at Martians. You got Martians. Even the colonel made a comment when we were in the bunker one day. And he passed me and he says, Brennan, Martians, huh? And then I remember one of the young lieutenants coming in, he says, are those Martians, do they smell? They smell any different than people? They were breaking our balls left and right about Martians. But who knows, I might have killed a couple out there. Well, we had a first sergeant. His name was Robert Kelleher, and he was by the book. And if you weren't by the book, you paid the price. And he used to go to me, Brennan, you're a thorn in my side. You're gonna fill 1,000 sandbags.
Although I did a good job with the duties assigned to me, I still found time to goof around a little bit and entertain the troops.
Humor. It was a very special, rare item there, you know, and yours was very raw, sick, but the kind I liked.
I was perpetually on a sandbag filling detail. Sandbag Ski was born.
I kind of liked you, but I didn't like you too, because you used to get us in a lot of trouble. You were different. you would do things that you weren't supposed to do and you'd do them anyway and get caught, and then we'd have to go fill sandbags.
I mean, how many thousands of sandbags do you need to fill before you just get fed up with a shovel, a sandbag, and some sand? So we enlisted the local kids. They were always hanging on and playing looky-loo, and so we'd give them a few cigarettes and they'd help us fill sandbags. And some of them got pretty good at it. So we just had, one of us would have to keep an eye on them to keep them doing it right. But the rest of us could just go swimming in the bay or something while that was going on. My unit moved up to Fubai, which is about a 60 or 70 mile relocation, and we had to go through the Haivon Pass.
And it was the big, like, holy mackerel ski, you turn the truck over.
I ended up rolling my truck, and when we got finally to the other end, Top Kelleher was there. Waszkiewicz, you rolled that truck.
Top Kelleher again. There was a corporal warrant that he had standing out in front of him.
And he had my corporal warrant.
And he ripped it up, and that was it for Waszkiewicz of being corporal.
He said, "We're going to hold off on this for a while," and he just tore it in half right in front of my face.
As a result of enemy actions, roughly half the vehicles in this convoy failed to reach their destinations.
Naturally, 18, 19-year-olds have girlfriend problems. They get Dear John letters.
I believe that had she known, had any idea of the impact that the Dear John would have caused to me, she would have waited.
Bill was married, and he came to me, he says, "Read this letter." He says, "Well, what do you make of this?" And I was frank with him, and I said, "Billy, I think you're going to be taken out of the ball game. I think she's getting ready to dump you." Nicest guy in the whole world, but he changed. He became very bitter towards things.
I had been going steady with a girl for some time, and she sent me a letter telling me that there was another guy that she was with.
It was a feeling of total abandonment that was out of your control.
I suspected between the lines that she opposed the war, and my being over there, plus the separation from her, had a lot to do with why she wound up writing me that letter and leaving.
They would have to go back in their fire teams and in their squads, and especially if they had to go out on night ambushes. And I would know that I would have one or two guys out of that squad that they weren't really thinking of what they were doing. They'd be thinking more or less of what was going on back home.
It was the heaviest thing I experienced in my life. If that connection was broken, you were lost. You were lost in a zone, a war zone.
When I had you, I had the power of love, pulling me through, and each passing hour brought me closer to home. When I had you let me go, baby. What could I say? Tell me, what could I say? Now I dream of home, but I don't know I don't know the way. Yeah, If I could dream of your eyes, they'll pull me through every sunrise, another day closer to home. Oh, when I had you, baby. When I had you, I had the power of love. Yeah, when I had you, your sweet love like moonlight. Yeah, when I had you, your sweet love like moonlight. Yeah, when I had you, your sweet love, sweet love, sweet love like moonlight.
With just a few weeks left on his 13-month tour, Marc signed on with Fox 25, a highly decorated infantry unit.
Some of the things that you would push me to do and ask permission to do that was way beyond the scope of being a forward observer. And you were basically a grunt at heart.
I extended my tour to go out with the grunts as a forward observer and go see what was really up.
On arrival in Fox Company, Marc was greeted with surly silence.
I got off the truck, found my way over to the commanding officer, a young captain named Dave Brown. There was no words of welcome. I didn't know who to ask for directions. And this fellow came up to me and had a smile on his face. And he said, "You're new here." "My name's Donnie Serwick."
Donnie Serwick was soon to become Marc's closest friend.
In the morning, we picked up our packs and we headed out, and man, I've never humped like that before. I mean, all that infantry training back in the States, that was kids' play. These packs were twice as heavy. We humped twice as fast and twice as far.
They were returning to the spot where Fox Company had been ambushed just 36 hours earlier.
I was furious because the lieutenant got them out there late. It was his fault, and I kept harassing him, and he just couldn't seem to assemble his people and get out there. And then they had 7 wounded, or either 7 or 8 wounded, and the opposite number, 7 or 8 killed.
We got into this little cluster of straw huts.
A lot of the villages you would go into and you would search, you might find 15, 18 women and 28 or 30 kids.
Dave Brown, the company commander, was fluent in speaking Vietnamese. He rounded up a couple of the old ladies and said, "Where did the bad guys go? What direction did they go?" Oh, they hadn't noticed anything. Only an ambush about 50 yards from their houses last night that killed 8 Marines, but they never heard anything. They never saw anything.
I was quite angry at that point. They had really ambushed and destroyed a lot of people and good Marines, and we went off after those enemy with vengeance.
Fox 25's first job was to search out food stores hidden in and around the village. Excess rice was confiscated, depriving the enemy of easily accessible meals.
Dave Brown chewed them out. He turned to the tank that was with us, and he said, "Flatten every hooch in this hamlet. I don't want anyone to ever be able to live here again." And one of the troops yelled out, "Operation Crush!" I literally had to dive out of the way as branches were breaking 20 feet to my right, and here comes a tank right through a brush line, just coming up in the air over the brush, and boom, right down on top of this hooch. The women were wailing and pleading, "Don't do this." I thought this was a heck of a way to run a war. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know the full story of the ambush. It just broke my heart.
Combat experience is one that's filled with a lot of noise. It's filled with a lot of, because of the noise, the rounds going off, a lot of yelling, a lot of motion. Men get hurt. They get hurt right next to you. And the corpsmen are trying to save their lives. From my position as the company commander, we're not only directing the fire of our rifle platoons, we're calling in artillery, we're calling in airstrikes, we're trying to report the status to the battalion commander, we're trying to get medevacs.
Captain Brown struck me as the embodiment of everything that I had been taught about or expected to see in an officer.
Captain Brown to us seemed kind of a quiet captain. You felt the feeling, automatic feeling that this guy knows what he's doing.
I had one focus, and that was making sure you got home safe and that we destroyed the enemy in the meantime. And that was my only focus.
Yet at the same time, he was a man who seemed genuinely interested in all of us enlisted troops and would always take the time when walking by to say something to us about whatever it is that we were doing, whether it was to crack a joke and laugh with us, or whether it was correct us about some aspect of our gear, or to come up and slap us on the shoulder as we were getting set to go somewhere.
I felt that there was a true respect and loving relationship, they to me. I've always felt embraced by them. They looked out for me, I looked out for them. Very much of a mutual respect. I thought they were all a bunch of heroes, and we were accomplishing our missions, and I'm sure they had that same kind of respect. Anytime any organization's successful, there's this mutual good feeling. The people with their bosses and the bosses with their people and all that type of stuff. We were horribly successful.
Infantry, by definition, spent most of their time out in the elements.
The weather was rainy during the monsoon seasons, and that was obvious, and they lasted for a long period of time. You really got wet, your fingers were all white and wrinkled constantly, your feet were subject to getting diseased, and of course for an infantry that was something that you just couldn't afford, so you had to take a lot of time keeping your feet dry. In the summer, it was just hot and miserable, but you got used to it. And you remember how hot it was, even the water was hot when we drank the canteen water, and we couldn't wait to get awake in the morning and have a cooler canteen drill of water.
We found this well. It was an old rock type well. We looked down inside of the well, and the water looked crystal clear down there, and we says, oh shit, we gotta get some of that water. We gotta get in that water. So we got an old cargo net, loaded it down the well, and we took turns going down in that well at first. And in fact, you were the first one down in the well. And I was sitting there going, this is unbelievable. I said, I'm not gonna do this. And I finally says, Hallie's having such a good time going down too. And I climbed down in the well with him, and the water was ice cold, but it was beautiful.
Angry villagers soon arrived to protest Mark and Donnie having fouled their village well. Helicopters provided everything for troops in the field.
When they come down out of the sky, it was like God coming down out of the sky to us. That was salvation to us. That was one of our only salvations, helicopters.
The blowing dust and the womp, 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 womp.
A little wine now and then, a little bourbon now and then, in soap bottles sometimes, and 409 bottles, and packed in popcorn. And
we watched the net carrying the chow open up, and all the chow fell down on the ground. There we were, 2 days in a row without food.
I watched the CH, I believe a 53, a big one, come in one time, and we knew there was beer on that. If we got 2 beers a month, at the most, we were lucky. Great big net hanging there, and all we could see was beer in that net. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of cases of beer coming for the company and other companies. And it crashed. And I think there was more hearts broken that day than the firefight that we were in the day before that.
We operated so far out into the hinterlands, it was designated a free fire zone. That meant for us, if anything moved, we could shoot it. It wasn't supposed to be there, period. Unfortunately, the Vietnamese people, land was handed down through generations, and it was a sacred kind of thing. So one of our duties was to round up locals, put them on helicopters, and get them the heck out of there, because we're moving through this valley and we're going to sweep it clean.
Saddle up, lock and load, select a switch on, rock and roll, advance online, recon by fire, grenades in cans with fishing wire, blooper rag, M16, Bookie Hewitt, and fixed wing. 055, Solar Ship, shell mix, fuse mix, make it quick.
Unlike the Viet Cong, who relied on guerrilla tactics, the NVA would sometimes challenge the Marines head-on. On one occasion, Fox's sister company, Hotel Company, walked into a U-shaped ambush, got pinned down, and were taking casualties. They radioed Fox Company for support. By the time Fox Company arrived, the battle had been raging for hours.
What was a significant event was the battles when we could locate and find and engage the enemy and then go to it like a bunch of Marines.
When we came through the tree line, we were immediately taken under fire by the enemy, and this had an intensity unlike anything I had seen before. This was a set-piece battle. These guys were here, and they were not leaving, and they were fighting for their ground, just like we wanted them to. They had a series of connecting bunkers with radio and telephones connecting the bunkers. We had to bust through to link up with Hotel Company. And in Marine logic, we set off right into the middle of the fighting, going through the jungle like that, kind of shoulder to shoulder, just blasting everything in front of us.
Do you remember Sergeant Marshall? I could hear him coming. He had the whole platoon in assault singing the Marine Corps hymn. How threatening. Can you imagine being an enemy and having that sound come at you? You now know why the Scotsmen play their bagpipes.
Suddenly we come through an opening, and as I'm looking at it, there was a little rock wall of little bricks, and one of the bricks just plops out. And I go, what the heck? And then a rifle barrel sticks out through that hole, and then all hell broke loose. The guy on my right was shot by the AK-47, and I watched him be blown backwards, land on his shoulders with his feet in the air, both hands clutching his chest. He died in our arms. There was nothing we could do. There was one enemy soldier who would pop out the back door and throw 3 or 4 grenades. Dennis Cadigan had rounded the bunker, and he was about 10 feet from the back door as they all came running out, 8 of them, and they all met the same fate.
The battle continued well into the next day, when finally the NVA pulled out, disappearing off into the jungle.
Fox Company, during my command, we had 155 casualties. To my knowledge, we had 27 men killed.
Part of me died. part of me died. That was my brother. And part of me died when he died.
I guess it was a F-16 coming in and dropping some rounds on a ville that we had just come through. And the rest of our outfit was still walking through that ville. First thing I came across was a rib cage. Stepped over that, stepped over a couple boots, a couple legs. They'd wiped out quite a few of our guys that were on the tail end of our line. I remember throwing a body on top of a pile of bodies right after a firefight when the chopper came in to take them. And I remember it rolling down the pile of 10, 11 that was already there and having to pick them back up and put them back on the poncho and get them back up in there somehow.
Having guys who I was close to be gone in a flash was very disconcerting and made me in part want to withdraw from other people.
At first I would kind of say, oh no, who? Who?
And if you had died, I would have said the same thing over your body that you probably would have said to me. You know, wow, that's too bad, and I'll miss him, but thank God it's not me.
At first I would get mad at that individual. Even though he was dead or seriously wounded, I would get mad at that individual, saying to myself, kind of talking to him, saying, why you? What did you do? And then very sad and hurt.
My first experience of someone whom I was close to dying was in an ambush one night. That I was supposed to be the machine gunner with the squad that got hit, but my friend told me that he would go with that squad. I could go with the other one that was setting up an ambush closer by. And as I set up, I watched that other squad get hit about a mile away.
After a while, you see so many guys get killed. You see so many people that are gone in a matter of a second.
And when I got there, I came around the tank that we had been trailing down to the site, and there I found my friend shot through the head and burnt almost completely by a Willie Peter phosphorus grenade.
Some guys made tight relationships. That's why it affected them when they would lose someone.
My reaction was very mixed but very powerful. It was revulsion at the sight of a burnt and mutilated body with bullet holes everywhere. It was grief at the thought that I would never be able to play cards or talk with Jerry again. And all the plans that we had, what we were going to do when we got back to the world, were gone in a moment as I saw him dead on the road. And hatred for the people who had done this to him. My next reaction was a violent, overwhelming sorrow and rage, and I charged a tree line with my machine gun in the dark, just firing off belt after belt, crying and swearing and cursing.
Only luck could prevent a person from getting injured. And if he wasn't skillful, he was almost a 100%er.
Were you ever afraid in Vietnam?
I was scared, quite a bit. I was scared.
Every moment I was in Vietnam, I was scared. I was always scared.
I knew it could happen tomorrow, it could happen to me.
I was scared one time.
2 moments of greatest terror were in the middle of that September 29th firefight when my gun double-fed, jammed, and I had a VC pop up over the edge of the trench and spray me with 30 rounds from an AK-47, every one of which missed. Praise God.
In the position I was in, I couldn't show fear. I felt it'd be like a complete demoralization of my platoon. As scared as they would be more scared, knowing they didn't have somebody to actually go to lead them.
When you get shelled by artillery or mortars or rockets, it's the same in every war, the sheer terror.
Fox Company was positioned to block NVA infiltration routes toward Danang, 20 miles to the northeast. One day, Fox Company would observe enemy movements.
And there were always plenty to be found, by the dozens, by the scores, and sometimes by the hundreds.
Other days, they patrolled the bush in order to flush out the enemy.
Along the way, we'd run into plenty of booby traps. You might have a 500-pound bomb buried in the ground with a small bomb on top of it, uncleverly hidden, so it would be intended to be found. So when you would try to disarm the top bomb, it would set off this huge one below it. A 500-pound bomb will leave a crater big enough to bury a 2-story house. Other booby traps, there might be 15 or 20 grenades, all connected by wires through the trees and the bushes, and you'd trip a tripwire, and it would set off the whole daisy chain of grenades at head level. There'd be bouncing Betty mines. You'd step on it, and when you picked your foot up, it would spring up to about waist level and explode.
A booby-trapped ammo can was responsible for ending Dennis Cadigan's tour.
I remember how brave he was, as typical of one of the fine people we had in Fox Company.
A very outgoing type person, and a very, very extremely good machine gunner. If there was any weapon I would want that man to carry, it would be the M60 machine gun.
There was a new troop that just arrived, and he suspected this one ammo box may be booby-trapped. And Dennis was so typical. He didn't want the new person to get hurt, so he volunteered to open the box.
I think he feels it was his job to go do this. He didn't want nobody around it but him.
And he did so with his rifle, and he extended his rifle out, and there was a much larger charge that was in the ammo box.
He got hit in the facial area in the head, and he lost his eyesight.
That was a very powerful part of my experience, because as I laid there, I knew I was hurt. I knew I could die, but I also thought to myself, I'm out of this hellhole, I'm out of here.
I can recall very vividly how brave he was with that situation, his eyeballs not really in his head anymore, just dangling on the side. And the corpsman had patched him up, put a pad over his eyes, and we were all giving him a lot of encouragement that he'll be going home and things will be better and all that kind of stuff. But it was one of those situations where, gosh, from our position, it didn't look too very good.
I can remember the feel of the metal floor of the helicopter and it lifting off, and the sensation of cooling air as it went higher and higher and higher. And finally, out over the water, it got very cold. By the time we reached the hospital ship, I was shaking a mile a minute. In retrospect, when I was laying in the hospital, I realized that that experience wasn't so much from the environment, but probably from the loss of blood and shock.
And that was a great, great, great loss to the platoon, the company. Everybody knew him. When I first got there, we were doing road security, the main road between Foulac 6 and Anwa. We had a minesweeping team that would walk out ahead of us. And we would put squads out to the left and right off the road, sweeping kind of almost ahead of the minesweeping team. It was a bad area for booby traps. And we always had to kind of stay ahead of the minesweeping team, and it was scary walking through there, both sides of that road.
Certainly we were looking for the enemy. Certainly we were in a mine and booby trap area. So because we were going in harm's way, we were asking for it.
When it would get dark out in the bush, that's when the enemy would start their activities. That's when they had an equal footing to us.
Well, it's another long night out in the dark. The VC's bite is worse than their bark. I get uptight when I try to stay calm. Hey, it's just another long night in the knob. We're sleeping in the foxhole dinner too. Beans and weenies, helmets too. It's no surprise that I'm feeling mean with his dirt decor and canned cuisine. And it's another long night out in the dark. The VC's bite is worse than their bark.
Basically, I didn't hate the enemy. When I got up to Fox Company, and we really were engaged with the enemy a lot of times, I treated the enemy as being the other guy on a football field who, in one moment, you're supposed to knock his head off. He's down, and you have scored a touchdown. You reach down, you pick up his hand, and you help him up. He's another person. And I wanted to know about him personally. I wanted to know about anything I could learn as far as intelligence goes. But he was out of the war. He was surrounded by a bunch of Marines. One skinny little Vietnamese enemy was surrounded by a bunch of mean Marines. My God, if I was him, I'd be scared to death. And I didn't want him to be scared to death. He was out of the war. His number had come up, and that was the end of it. So I respected the enemy, and they were a hell of a good enemy, I might say that. I love the kids in Vietnam. If we had a purpose over there, it was to give them a better life and let them see a more peaceful, tranquil world than they had known while they were being a kid.
A little kid who was selling soda at Liberty Bridge when I was first in country in the first month. And I marveled at the fact that this kid seemed so cheerful and bright when we were in the midst of an area of operations which I had already seen could get a little scary.
Them being over there in a war zone is rather heart-rendering type of things because many of them got hurt.
I basically remember the kids in the villas, let's say after a napalm attack. I remember the kids laying there screaming.
It was very hard to adjust to seeing kids like this. Full of disease, full of flies, never ever had a bath or didn't know what soap was or any kind of things to clean their bodies up.
We had been set up in a perimeter and some kids came up talking to us, and the next thing I heard was a shout. I turned around and the kid was running, and he had reached into a pack and he had 2 grenades in his hands. And one of the guys said, "Stop, stop," and the kid kept running, and he fired a burst over his head, and the kid just ran faster and dropped the hand grenades as he went over a paddy dike.
And it was a shame to see him like this. And you would want to help him, but you couldn't. You had a job to do, and the job you were doing, you did.
When pressed, the NVA were skilled at covering their tracks.
They'd quickly dig a hole, they'd bury their weapons and their uniforms, and make it look like a grave, and they'd put on civilian clothes and just hang around and pretend to be a local farmer. We started digging up fresh graves, and we would find their uniforms and weapons. Then they one-upped us and put a body in it. So we'd dig up fresh graves and remove the corpse and continue digging in the muck and mire underneath it. The stench would permeate your skin, and you could smell it for days. And we could wash with soap and water. It didn't do any good.
The military rewarded those who extended their tours by granting 30 days free leave anywhere in the world.
So I was told, okay, next chopper out, get on it, Ski. Your papers came in, you're going home for 30 days. So I hopped on a helicopter, flew to Danang. Within 48 hours from the battlefield, I was home and sitting at my parents' dinner table. And I kept smelling this obnoxious smell. And then I noticed it was my hands. They still smelled of death from the battlefield. My dad's 23 years in the Navy, retired. I wanted to talk to him about my veteran experiences, about being in war. He really wasn't interested. And my mom pipes in and says, "Oh, Mark, let's not talk about all that stuff. You're home for Christmas. You're here right now. Let's just talk about that." They wanted to pretend it didn't exist, and let's just smile and have Christmas dinner. So we had Christmas dinner. My two brothers had these tiger-striped pajamas. It was exactly the same tiger striping camouflage pattern that the Korean Marines wore in Vietnam. And there's my two brothers, and they're opening their presents, and they got a G.I. Joe action set. And there's my brother with the Jeep and a little trailer, and my other brother with a searchlight and a couple soldiers, and there was an American flag. They handed me the flag so I could hold the flag over the battlefield, and then they proceeded to crash the Jeep and wreck it and have the guys go flying out, and they're laughing and making bomb sounds, and that was Christmas.
Around this time, Mark extended for yet another tour of duty.
So my 30 days in the world is over. I'm back in Annam and rejoined Fox Company.
And some guys, like yourself, as far as I'm concerned, just out in another time warp to go actually 2 or 3 tours from experiences of the Second World War and the mental illnesses that occurred, that this guy's out there if he wants to go back. And if you survive 2, you could go back again. I mean, that to me, to look back now, that was absolutely absurd, that they would actually allow you to be able to do that.
After nearly 2 years of frontline duty, Mark's belief in his own invulnerability came into full bloom.
Operation Mead River was a huge airlift, and we entirely encircled a large enemy unit. We knew darn well there was a whole bunch of them able to see us from the other side, hidden in the foliage. It was really pretty close, maybe 75 yards or so, maybe even closer than that. Throughout the day, a sniper would open up and bing, bing, and a little dirt would kick up next to your head or something, and you go, "That son of a bitch has me pegged. He got my number."
It was one hot afternoon. We were all taking a break there, laying there for a while. We were set in there for a while.
We were running short on supplies. One of those supplies we were running short of was toilet paper.
I was talking to Mark. He always come over to me and would sit down and talk about what was going on and what we thought was going to happen.
So I had to go relieve myself.
So finally, he just got up and walked away. And so I said, "Yeah, well, I'm just going to sit here and rest a little bit."
Went a few yards away behind some bushes and dropped my drawers, and I go, what am I going to do now? And I looked at the bush next to me, and it had these big leaves, and I said, oh, that'll do nicely. So, in fact, it did serve the purpose nicely. And it reminded me of some of the pictures I had seen in Catholic grade school.
Next thing I hear, some of the guys in my platoon, they're cracking up and they're laughing. I'm saying, what the hell are you laughing at?
I found a string, and I took one of these leaves, and it had a stem on it, like a maple leaf.
And I turned around and looked, and here comes Mark. And he was bare-ass. He had no clothes on.
I grabbed a piece of bamboo, whacked it to a point with a machete. I was now Adam in the Garden of Eden.
And he had tied leaves from trees in his front and in his back.
The guys on watch are a little tense. This is a tight situation because the guy kept popping off rounds at us. Well, I just run up on top of this parapet and I start yelling in Vietnamese, all sorts of curses and challenges. I run down the embankment, out in front of our troops, out on the sandbar.
All around our perimeter, through our lines.
I'm telling them my exploits with their mother and how many enemy soldiers I've killed, and I challenge any warrior to come here and fight me man to man.
People would just scatter, and they didn't even want to go near him.
I'm recreating the scene from, every old Western we've ever seen or every war movie.
They thought he had finally lost it. He cracked. But he did bring a hell of a laugh to everybody there.
they're belly laughing and pointing and calling me names, telling me what an idiot I am. I'm eating it up. I'm the show-off. I'm the clown. I'm doing this Watusi dancing. And it kind of struck me, maybe I'm overdoing this a bit. Maybe this is really dumb. Wouldn't this be a messed up way to get killed? I mean, sent home with a fig leaf?
"5 days of R&R in Bangkok, Thailand could not have come too soon.
Saddle up, move it out, got the word and it's about. Dee-dee, huh, dee-dee, now. Yeah, chopper on a LZ, gonna see my baby. Dee-dee, dee-dee, now. Get me going, I mean right now. I just can't wait to. Dee-dee, now, dee-dee, now, dee-dee, now. Freedom bird to Bangkok, take a cab around the block. Dee-dee, dee-dee, wow. Ooh, pick a girl, let it rock, blow and cash around the clock. Dee-dee, huh, dee-dee, wow. Well, I'd stay right here if I could somehow, but the party's over.
Mark spent his last few weeks in country with Echo Company and has few memories of that time, except that, in his words, there was a lot of blood. Mark was visiting a fire support base when, one evening, an NVA sapper platoon partially overran the garrison. During the battle, Mark fought through enemy lines to rescue 8 trapped Marines, but was finally himself shot and left for dead. The next morning, as fighting continued, Mark was pulled from the field by his friend, Sergeant John Hare. Highly decorated and heading for home, now Sergeant Waszkiewicz was to face 6 months of surgeries and rehabilitation, after which he received his honorable discharge.
We really saved a lot of lives, mainly because of you, and so deep respect, Mark, for you.
The combat experience forges a powerful sense of camaraderie. In this war, they called it being tight.
I don't know where the word ever came from or whoever started that, being tight, but it fit what was actually happening to us. You just kept pulling together and pulling together and pulling together.
No one knows how it feels to be working side by side, counting days, monsoon mud. No one knows except for you. No one knows how I feel with my brothers all around me. They keep me laughing, keep me high. No one knows except for you.
The camaraderie and the feeling of how deep an intimacy could be achieved with a fellow human being, I don't think I've ever forgotten.
No one knows how this feels in the jungle every step. Here's a wager with the devil, and no one knows except for you.
And I remember the black kid that saved my life. He was in the process of he saved one life, and he definitely saved my life, because I was immediately going out to pull that first lieutenant in. A foot and a half. He couldn't have stuck his head up from behind that tank more than a foot. And he took that round just faster than you can spit, right in the neck.
No one knows how it feels. Hell breaks loose, the bullets fly.
That one definitely stays with me for the rest of my life.
A brother dying and crying. No one knows except for you.
Being tight meant dependability. It meant oneness. It meant that I could trust those guys with my life. with anything. That was tight.
You're my brothers, you're my friends, like I'll never have again. And I'd die for if I was called. No one knows except for you. No one knows how it feels heading home with solemn vows to remember and get together. No one knows except for you.
Most guys counted the days, having calendars on their helmets or notches on a piece of wood.
A favorite time in Vietnam that I like to remember? Oh, it was the day I left. Got on that airplane and everybody was quiet, and it took off, and it got up, and nobody said a word until the pilot came on and said, "We have cleared Vietnamese airspace," and there was a roar and a cheer, and that was the greatest time that I had in Vietnam, was leaving Vietnam.
People just don't understand what it was like when we came home.
It changed a lot of guys a lot of different ways.
I went to the VFW and they told me, well, you're only going to be an associate member. It's not a real war.
When I came back, I was a fully confident, successful Marine officer.
I even denied being in Vietnam a couple of times because I was ashamed. Everybody had said that we had lost the war, and I sit back and I remember every battle we were in, we won.
Many Vietnam vets still carry a lot of bitterness and pain about their service in Vietnam.
We got the Royal Shaft, and we felt, well, at least when we came home, that would end, and it didn't.
People that asked, they would find out, they knew I was crazy. They'd say, you're crazy. You're a Marine? And yeah, I'm a Marine.
Post-traumatic stress disorder is often associated with Vietnam and Vietnam-era veterans.
It caught up to me 15 years later. That's my alcohol and drinking problem.
I pretty much had, I guess, delayed post-traumatic stress disorder. It started about 10 to 12 years when I started really getting into the drugs, sold the house, just started moving.
Things started just piling up and getting worse and worse.
I had bad dreams. She would hear me screaming in the night, "What's the matter, what's the matter?" And I sleep with a gun under my bed and a machete.
No one knows how this feels, seeking peace and reaching out. Hold together, let it go. No one knows except for you.
Ooh, the war. I helped raise funds for the war. The first time I went, my legs were rubber. But when I got down to the, I guess they call it the apex, where it meets, I felt like I was back in Vietnam with my friends again.
I went, even though I will never know this young black kid's name who saved my life, I had to thank him somehow.
I marched young and strong into the fire. I was moved by faith and courage, fear and desire. I never guessed that my dreams would go down so hard. Yeah, it's the changing of the guard.
it here, we like it here. Fucking A, we like it here. We shine our shoes and polish our brass just to kiss some life is ass. We like it here, we like it here. Fucking A, we like it here.
Do you remember the music? Like I remember flying away on the magic and the beauty, laughing and crying and belting out harmony. Last night I had it happen again, Billy. I was with some friends, we were drinking wine. I drifted off in the music. The chills shot down my spine and I was flying. It's like a gift from God or the universe or something, to feel that one sweet moment of bliss, the perfect chord or sunset or wave, or the one you love when she finally gives you that first real kiss. Oh yeah, and it's no wonder that we survive unsafe at any speed, when it feels that fine to be alive, unsafe at any speed. Here we go flying into the night, unsafe at any speed, getting by, on getting by.
And he always said to me, if you're nice to me, I'm going to let you be in my movie. and here I am today. I guess I was nice to him.
Hey, Will. You're talking to your iMac or your iPad?
Yeah.
You're doing a very good job. I'm just hearing it. I just want to let a little air in here and just mention it on the way by. All right.